Peace be upon you, friends. Can a son throw his mother, who raised him, out onto the street on a cold winter day simply because she is ill? Ahmet the silk merchant did. But a fire that night reduced not only his wealth, but also his arrogance to ashes. The saying, "If his mother is cold, his house will not be warm," is a testament to this. You will not be able to hold back your tears as you listen to this cautionary tale. In Bursa's famous covered bazaar, steeped in history, there was no one who didn't know Ahmet the silk merchant, whose stalls were filled with the rarest silks and the most expensive velvets. He had transformed a tiny shop inherited from his father into a huge store thanks to his business, acumen, and ambition. He owned a 3-story mansion with pools in its garden in the city's most luxurious neighborhood, cars parked at its gates, and employees at his disposal. Ahmet's business scales were infallible, but his conscience was beginning to crumble under the weight of his wealth. Ahmet's elderly mother, Zeliha Hanım, also lived in this magnificent mansion. Zeliha Ana had been widowed at a young age. She had raised Ahmet by washing clothes at other people's houses, by clawing her way up. She had sacrificed her youth so that my son would get an education, so he would become a man, so he wouldn't be dependent on anyone. Now she was old, her knees weak, her hands trembling. But Ahmet's wife, Sevda, was a woman renowned for her arrogance as much as her beauty. She was bothered by Zeliha's presence, her cough, even the tapping of her cane on the parquet floor. In Sevda's view, this old woman was no different from an old object that spoiled the sophisticated atmosphere of the house. One winter evening, while snow was falling heavily outside, the table was set in the mansion. Ahmet, tired from work, sat at the head of the table. As Zeliha tried to drink her soup with trembling hands, the spoon slipped and the soup spilled onto the pristine, white lace tablecloth. Sevda screamed as if a disaster had occurred. Zeliha Ana bowed her head, looking at the stain of the spilled soup. She didn't say a word. She neither got angry at her daughter-in-law nor reproached her son. She just silently wiped away a single tear that streamed down her wrinkled cheek with her hand. At that moment, the big Chinar felt ashamed of his own existence, so that his son wouldn't be caught in the middle. Ahmet remained silent in the face of his wife's ultimatum. At that moment, he made a choice at that table. He chose not his mother, who had raised him to this age and fed him, but the desires of his ego, his wife's. He chose peace. The next morning, Ahmet didn't go to work. He sat next to his mother on the old armchair by the window. "Mother," he said, his voice trembling, "you know the house is crowded. Sevda is a little unwell. You know that old vineyard house, inherited from your father on the outskirts of the city? It's quieter, more peaceful. You can rest your head there." Zeliha looked at her son's face. There were thousands of words in that look, but only these words came out of her mouth. Quote, 5. The vineyard house, he mentioned, was a ruin, far from the city, its door unopened for years, its windows broken, its roof leaking. Ahmet was telling himself lies to silence his conscience, saying he would have a stove installed, stockpile provisions, and visit every day. In the afternoon, Ahmet loaded his mother and a few belongings into the car. Sevda watched them from behind the curtain with the air of a victorious commander. The car left the luxurious streets of the city and headed towards that desolate, cold house. When they arrived home, it was colder inside than outside. The smell of dampness was unbearable. Ahmet sat his mother down on an old divan. He hastily lit the stove, but it was impossible to warm that dilapidated house. As Ahmet rushed toward the door, Zeliha, his mother, called after him. Her voice wasn't full of reproach, but her words were like a seal Ahmet would never forget. "Are you leaving, son? Go. You've left me in this cold house, in this desolate place. But remember, Ahmet, only God knows how warm the house of someone who chills his mother today will be tomorrow. May God not bring fire upon you." Ahmet ignored these words, closed the door, got into his car, and sped away. He thought he was leaving behind a mother in that icy house, her hands clasped, praying, "Lord, forgive my son, write his sins onto me." But what he was leaving behind was his own disaster. When he returned to the city that evening, Ahmet felt a strange unease, but his wife Sevda was cheerful. "Ah, finally," said Sevda. Our house breathed a sigh of relief. "Let's have a celebration tonight, Ahmet." But Ahmet couldn't get warm in his bed that night. He piled the blankets on top of each other, but his shivering wouldn't stop. His bones ached at the thought of the cold house where he'd left his mother, and then, at midnight, a terrible sound shattered the silence of the city. The whistles of the guards and cries of _10. Ahmet rushed to the window and saw the sky painted by the daughter of the city. Flames were coming from the covered market, the heart of the city. It was rising. The wind was so fierce that the fire was advancing like a dragon towards the shop where Ahmet's entire fortune was kept. A hellish heat awaited Ahmet that night, leaving his mother out in the cold. When Ahmet hastily put on a coat over his pajamas and rushed out into the street, the sky, though it was midnight, was as bright as a fiery day. The pungent smell of smoke permeated the entire city. The streets resembled a scene from the Last Judgment, filled with people running to the market with buckets, weeping women, and the terrified neighing of horses. When Ahmet reached the market entrance, breathless, his legs gave way at the sight. The century-old covered market had transformed into a giant ball of fire. The famous wooden ceilings creaked, and the lead domes melted from the heat. "My shop!" Ahmet cried. "My goods! My safe!" He tried to push his way through the crowd, but guards, soldiers, and firemen formed a human wall. "You can't enter." "Ah!" shouted a sergeant. "The roof is collapsing. Are you going to lose your life?" Ahmet grabbed the sergeant by the collar. His eyes were wild. "Do you know who I am? I'm Ahmet, the silk merchant. Those goods inside could buy your whole family. Let me go." The sergeant pushed Ahmet away roughly. "Goods are precious, sir, I understand, but the fire inside knows no lord, no master. Pray that the wind changes direction." But the wind didn't change. On the contrary, it was as if an invisible hand was blowing the flames, especially towards the row where Ahmet's shop was located. While other shops were being wetted and protected, black smoke rose into the sky from the section where Ahmet's warehouse was. Ahmet thrashed helplessly where he stood. Then he saw the roof of his shop collapse with a great noise. The flames were swallowing his much-vaunted Damascus silks and priceless velvets like scraps of paper. Quote 17. Ahmet groaned. His gold, along with promissory notes, deeds, and cash, were kept in an iron safe at the back of the shop. From afar he could see the flames melting and bending, even that iron safe. Years of hard work, sweat, ambition, pride, it was all before his eyes. In minutes it was turning into black smoke and dissolving into the air. At that moment, as the heat of the flames hit his face, Ahmet strangely thought of his mother. Last night, as he left her at that icy country house, he had said to her, quote, 18. In the hellish heat hitting his face, Ahmet felt how cold he actually was. This fire wasn't warming him, it was burning him. He had made his mother cold, and now God was answering by burning his worldly possessions. When the fire was brought under control in the early morning, only traces, smoke, and a pitch-black ruin remained. Ahmet entered the wreckage of his smoking shop. He tripped over burnt silk balls and melted silver candlesticks. When he reached the safe, he saw that it was filled with charred pieces of paper. The deeds, the promissory notes, everything was gone. All that remained were melted, shapeless piles of metal. Ahmet slumped onto a sooty stone. He buried his head in his hands. He couldn't even cry. He was in shock. An old shopkeeper passing by touched Ahmet's shoulder. This man was Uncle Ismail, the spice merchant Ahmet had once looked down upon as a poor man's shop. Ismail's shop was right next to Ahmet's, but miraculously it had been saved from burning by a change in the wind. Quote 19, said Uncle Ismail. Quote 20. Ahmet looked on blankly. Quote 21, Uncle Ismail nodded meaningfully. Quote 22. Quote 23. Ahmet couldn't answer. His face was blackened with shame and soot. Towards noon, his clothes torn, his face and eyes trembling, he returned to his mansion. When he entered through that magnificent door, his wife, Sevda, was waiting for him in the living room. Sevda rose in horror when she saw her husband's wretched state. But the first question she asked wasn't whether Ahmet was all right. "Ahmet," Sevda shouted, "are the reports from the market true? Did every shop burn down completely? And what about the jewels in the safe, my necklaces, the deeds?" Ahmet looked at his wife. He had thrown his mother out onto the street on a cold winter day for this woman. He had amassed a fortune for this woman. And now, while he was struggling for his life, she was still asking about his necklaces. "It's all burned, Sevda," Ahmet said, his voice sounding like a dead man. "It's all burned to ashes. We don't have a penny left." Sevda threw herself onto the sofa, having a nervous breakdown. "What do you mean, nothing left? How can you not have any? Wasn't there insurance? What about the debts? How are we going to live now? What am I going to tell my socialite friends? Am I going to say my husband went bankrupt?" Ahmet no longer heard his wife's screams. All he could hear was his mother's silent prayer and the howling of the wind. Just then the door was violently knocked. The maid opened the door fearfully. It was the men from the wholesalers Ahmet bought goods from. Hearing the news of the fire, the creditors were thinking, what if Ahmet runs away? They had arrived at the mansion's gates, terrified. Quote 30, the men shouted. Quote 31, Ahmet was caught in the middle of the living room, his wife weeping and blaming him on one side, and the creditors banging on the door on the other. Those who had bowed before him yesterday now wanted to tear him to pieces. And do you know what the most painful thing was? The only place he could take refuge, the only place he could cry with his head on someone's lap was that cold country house. But Ahmet had no face to go there. How could he go to that cold house where he had frozen his mother, now with the fire burning in his own heart? Only a week had passed since the fire, but for Ahmet, it felt like an eternity. The creditors swooped down on Ahmet like a pack of hyenas. The burning of the shop didn't erase the debts. Since his cash and promissory notes had turned to ashes, Ahmet had to sell everything he owned to pay his debts. First, the cars were gone. Then, those famous horsemen finally arrived at the magnificent mansion that Ahmet called his palace, the one he had driven his mother out of for disturbing his peace. The mansion was sold off at auction to pay off debts. When eviction day arrived, Ahmet stood in the middle of his living room watching the belongings being moved. But the real blow came not from the movers about to leave, but from his wife Sevda, who came down the stairs. Sevda, with her largest suitcases, was dressed and adorned as if she were going on a vacation. Ahmet looked at her in astonishment. Sevda interrupted Ahmet with a burst of laughter, but it wasn't a cheerful laugh. It was more like this. My country house? You can live in that mouse hole? Ahmet, I'm going to my father's house. Ahmet looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. Quote 34, Sevda left her suitcase by the door and spewed the venom she had been hiding for years onto Ahmet's face. Ahmet, get a grip. I married you because you're Ahmet the silk merchant. I have no business with bankrupt Ahmet. You even threw your old mother out onto the street for my pleasure. Did you think a man who can't even help his mother could help his wife? You're finished, Ahmet. I didn't come to this world to suffer. My lawyer will send the divorce papers. Sevda slammed the door and left without even looking back. Ahmet knelt in the middle of the empty, cold living room. The walls seemed to be closing in on him. Sevda's cruel but true words echoed in his ears. Quote 36, quote 37. Ahmet groaned. Quote 38. Towards evening, the new owners of the mansion arrived and kicked Ahmet out. With the last few pennies in his pocket, Ahmet threw himself onto the street. The air was freezing. It was snowing lightly. A week ago, Ahmet had buttoned his jacket in front of everyone, but now he had his coat collar turned up. He was hiding in every corner so no one would recognize him. He took shelter in the courtyard of an old inn to spend the night. He was hungry. With the money in his pocket, he bought a bagel. He huddled in a corner. As he took a bite of the bagel, a lump formed in his throat. He remembered the warm tarhana soup his mother used to make. When Ahmet came home from work, his mother would put bowls of soup in front of him, saying, quote, 39. Back then, Ahmet would wrinkle his nose and say, quote, 40. Now he needed that bowl of soup, but most of all, that affectionate voice calling him quote, 41 . When morning came, Ahmet started wandering around the market. He thought maybe one of his old friends would help him, lend him money. He saw Ruza, the jeweler, whom he had treated to meals and received gifts from for years. Quote 42, he called out hopefully. Ruza saw Ahmet, recognized him, but ignored him and turned his head. He went into his shop and closed the door. Then he saw Veli, the fabric merchant. Without even returning Ahmet's greeting, Veli said, We're busy, brother, don't bother us, he said, and sent Ahmet away with his apprentice. That day, Ahmet was chased away from the doors of everyone he considered a friend until evening. He understood that those people were greeting him not for Ahmet himself, but for the gold in his pocket. When the gold was gone, the greetings were gone too. When darkness fell, Ahmet sat on a bench in the city park. The cold was penetrating his bones. He began to shiver. But this shivering wasn't just from the cold. It was from guilt. The vineyard house came to his mind again. How had his mother lived in that dilapidated, cold place where he had left her? What if she had fallen ill? What if she had died? This thought terrified Ahmet. He had no money, no house, no reputation left to lose. The only thing left was his mother, if she was still alive. I'll go and fall at her feet. Even if she chases me away, even if she spits in my face, I'll lie at her door like a dog. I know she won't forgive me. If I were her, I wouldn't forgive her either, but at least let me ask for her forgiveness before I die. Could it be that I'm too late? Gathering his last ounce of strength, he began to run towards the hill. He fell, got up. His hands bled, but he didn't stop. When he reached that door, he would face the greatest test of his life. Did he have the courage to knock, or had that door been closed to him forever? Ahmet stood before the rotten wooden door of the vineyard house, his breath catching in his throat. He pressed his hands against the door, but didn't dare push. There was no sound from inside. It was pitch black, and the silence of death was palpable. The terrible thought gnawed at his brain. What if she had frozen? What if she had given up her belongings before he could reach her? Mother, inke! He cried. His voice was lost in the wind. Mother! I've come. Ahmet has come. There was no answer. Mother, mother, answer me. Please tell me you're not dead. Zeliha Ana slowly raised her head when she heard her son's voice. Her face was pale, her lips purple, but there was that familiar light in her eyes. She raised her trembling hand and touched Ahmet's ice-cold cheek. Ahmet, she whispered, my son, have you come? Am I dreaming, or has God answered my prayer? When Ahmet saw that his mother was alive, he burst into sobs. He buried his head in his mother's lap and began to cry like a child. Forgive me, mother, please forgive me. I am nothing. I am cruel. I left you in this cold. I abandoned you for that snake of a wife of mine. God has punished me, mother. Everything I had is gone. My house, my shop, my money, it's all turned to ashes. I'm homeless, mother. I have no one left. Ahmet expected his mother to scold him, to yell at him, to say, "May you suffer," and she had every right to, but Mother Zelia, with her age-worn, trembling hand, stroked her son's hair. "Thank God, you can't," she said. Ahmet was surprised. He looked up. "What are you thankful for, Mother? I'm finished. I'm ruined." Mother Zelia looked at her son with teary eyes and gave that heart-wrenching answer. "Not that your possessions burned, son. That fire burned your carelessness, reduced it to ashes. It brought out the compassionate Ahmet within you. That's what I'm thankful for. If you had come here as Ahmet the silk merchant, you wouldn't have heard me. But you came as Ahmet, my son. You are most welcome. You're cold. Look at your hands. They're ice cold. Come, get under the blanket. I'm fine. I'm used to the cold. You're not." That was what a mother was. Even as he lay freezing to death, he worried about the cold hands of his son who had thrown him there. Ahmet melted away in the face of this selfless love. His pride and arrogance vanished. That night, Ahmet slept in that cold country house, embracing his mother, finding a peace he couldn't find in the feather beds of his luxurious mansion. The next morning, Ahmet woke up to a new life. He had no money in his pocket, but he carried his mother's blessings. He went down to the city. Putting his pride aside, he went to the bagel bakery. "Master," he said, "give me a tray of bagels. I have no capital. I'll sell them and pay you back." "Fresh bagels. My lord, I am pleased with my son. May you also be pleased with him, silk merchant." "My son never fades, neither in this world nor in the hereafter. Never ever break your parents' hearts for the sake of your spouse, your job, or your own desires. Don't forget that the gates of paradise pass through their parents' blessings. May Allah make us righteous children who receive the blessings of their parents." Dear friends, if this instructive story touched your hearts, you can support us by pressing the like button. Don't forget to share this story with your loved ones so that others can learn from it, and subscribe to our channel to meet again in our new stories. May you be entrusted to Allah's care. Mbu'ay.